Hello my dear friends, you're in the military summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. During the previous night, the Ukrainians launched massive missile attack on Crimea. The Ukrainians were trying to hit the military objects. Later, a few hours after the first videos of Ukrainian attack published, the Ukrainians, gave us additional details about the targets that they were trying to hit. For example, on this video we can see how civilians from Crimea, more precisely from Alushta, were filming the area of significant number of explosions. On this part of the video we see the Russian air defense missile was moving to the sky, but most likely most of Ukrainian missiles managed to penetrate the Russian air defense belt and to destroy some target. And a bit later, and other Ukrainian sources published the photo of possible attack, what exactly the Ukrainians were trying to hit. As you can see, this is some kind of base that with connection to the satellites, and this target most likely was the main objective of Ukrainians. Furthermore, later we got updates that the Russians launched counter-missile attack on Odessa. There were also a significant number of explosions, but yet we haven't received any details about the targets and the results of Russian strikes. Now let's move to the line of combat contact. We have a lot of updates, and first we're going to talk about Kharkiv direction. The mappers started updating their maps in the northern part of Volchansk. For example, Syriac returned significant number of streets and buildings under complete Ukrainian control. I'll remind you that most of the mappers during the previous few weeks completely colored the northern Volchansk under the control color of Russian Federation, and now everybody started moving back, showing that there are still Ukrainian positions and that Ukrainians still control the citadel in the central part, and that Ukrainians control the industrial zone in the southern part of the northern Volchansk, and the eastern Volchansk is in complete control of the armed forces of Ukraine. The Russians from the other side continue bombing and pummeling the Ukrainian forces in the southern part. The Ukrainians continue concentration of forces, bringing additional ammo depots and some munitions, and the Russians are targeting them always. Now let's move to the line of combat contact in Kupyansk direction. According to information we have, the Russians managed to break through the Ukrainian defense belt in the vicinity of Ivanovka and to capture the first buildings in the southern part of the village. Yet we haven't received any geolocations confirming this, so for now we are not going to change the map, because the source is not like 100% reliable. Now let's move further to the south. Very interesting details are coming from Bilogorovka direction. Today the Russian sources published the video of how they were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian forces in the vicinity of Bilogorovka. I'll remind you that a few days ago the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of offensive operation they managed to establish complete control over the village by the name of Bilogorovka. Based on that report we have adjusted the map, and now we start receiving videos from the northern part of Bilogorovka of Russian artillery strikes, and now we have also the adjustment of maps of different mappers, also confirming that either the Ukrainians managed to counterattack or maybe the Russians haven't captured entire Bilogorovka at all. So most likely this territory, this territory will be adjusted under control of armed forces of Ukraine before the next video, so we will adjust the color. Now let's move further to the south. The Russians continue hunting and destroying the Ukrainian positions in Sporne. So most likely when talking about Siversk direction, this is the most active area, and it's like probably 1, 2, 3, 4 days, and the Russians will make another attempt to attack this territory, most likely. Now let's move to Chasiv Yar, Klishevka. We haven't received almost anything from Chasiv Yar, and few more additional updates from Ivanovska. The Russians during the previous phases of offensive operation on Chasiv Yar, Klishevka direction managed to achieve significant results. The Russians answered Chasiv Yar from the east, the Russians answered Chasiv Yar from the south. The Russians managed to secure Golubkovsky forest and Stupki Golubkovsky forest and German forest. The Russians forced the Ukrainians to fall back from Klishevka. The Russians returned control over Andreevka. So the Russians made significant, progress during the previous, let's say, days. And when talking about Klishchiivka and Andreevka, there are just the fields that remains under Ukraine control, but most likely the Ukrainians will be forced to fall back. And now the last target, the last thing the Russians need to secure before further offensive operation to the west is the forest between N32 road and between Klishchiivka and Andreevka. So these areas, I understand, is going to be the next target of the Russian armed forces before further offensive, because there are a lot of positions, there are a lot of trenches and fortifications, and there are lots of places where the Ukrainians can hide their infantry and troopers and equipment, so the Russians will try to attack there. Now let's move further. We're going to South Donetsk direction. We have additional updates from Novomikhailivka. According to information we have, the Russians managed to establish almost complete control over the village by the name of Paraskovyevka. More than 50% is already under Russian control. The Russians are pushing, and probably tomorrow or the day after, the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation will confirm complete control over the territory. Furthermore, the Russians continue expanding their footholds on the southern part of Konstantinovka. During the previous night, the Russians published the video of another attempt to storm the tree lines and defense belt of the armed forces of Ukraine. On this video, we can see the Russian personnel carrier heading towards the Ukrainian positions, and as you can see, without any problems, without any minefields, the Russians managed to cross the area and to land infantry. And after the landing operation, the Russian troopers captured another fortification and strong point. So that was like attack, something like this, and we see that the Russians are trying to keep a distance between their positions and Konstantinovka, but from the other side we see that the Russians are trying to get as close as possible to the main supply road TO524. The distance is around 3 kilometers. Furthermore, we have significant number of videos of FPV drone strikes in the same area a little bit to the southwest. The Russians were clearing this defense belt as well, which confirms that the Russians are planning to expand their foothold on this direction either. So if we summarize everything and if we summarize the posts, we understand that most likely this is what the Russians are planning to, let's say, achieve during the next few days or maybe weeks. So something like this is going to happen. We have missed one report from the north, from Liman area, from Izium area. The Russian sources published the video how they managed to discover the temporary position of the 3rd Azov Brigade, and as a result of Iskander strike, that temporary position was destroyed. Now let's move further. Today we got very interesting report from the borderlands with Romania. We have a video of very happy Ukrainian. A video of a happy Ukrainian who left the country and escaped from mobilization has gone viral on the internet. The whole journey took him around 3 days, during which he filmed 35 mini episodes about he survived and crossed the border. So more and more Ukrainians are trying to run away to escape Ukraine. Some of them are lucky, but not so many of them managed to do this. But most of Ukrainians are being kept during the previous period of, let's say, this situation. Furthermore, we got additional details about the assassination of the Prime Minister of Slovakia, and according to the wife of a person who tried to kill the Prime Minister, that motive was the desire to send the Prime Minister to a hospital bed for a long time. Allegedly, during recovery, other Slovak politicians would be able to resume military assistance to Ukraine. So, more or less, the sources, the investigators found the connection between the assassination of Prime Minister and the situation in Ukraine. When talking about Ukraine itself, we got a very interesting report from the very important person who questions Zelensky's legitimacy is an enemy of the state, Ruslan Stefanyuk, chairman of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. So probably the second or the third person in Ukraine told us during the previous few days that who questions Zelensky's legitimacy is an enemy of the state. And this is the democratic state in the eastern part of Europe. The Russians continue military purges. Additional generals were captured, and according to information we have, General Sukharab Akhmetov, responsible for the failed Togildar assault, has been fired. He made those attempts in the January of 2023, and he lost significant number of Russian troopers and armored vehicles during those attacks. And furthermore, another important thing, that the Russians found a solution how to arrest and to take the Western frozen assets. The Russians have a lot of, let's say, assets are in the count, and they are counted and valued about 288 billions. So basically, based on that, the Russians will not lose anything if Western countries arrest the Russians ones, because the Russians will have almost the same amount. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.